Okay. Slooh Space Camera Show will begin in about 3 to 4 minutes. Okay. All right, Slooh Space Camera Show will begin in about 3 minutes. 3 minutes. It's probably me. Go. Okay. So how are things out in the UK, Paul?
Yeah, good. Good. We're kind of it's trying to turn into spring, but not quite getting there. So.
Yeah, you know, it's actually turning a little bit better here out in California. It was.
I think a little bit better in California means a slightly different thing to England.
Yeah, I imagine so. I imagine so. Yeah, it's been actually pretty cold. It hasn't really hit the major spring yet, but it looks like it's starting to get there. Okay, the Slooh Show will officially begin in about 2 minutes. 2 minutes. If you're watching this in YouTube, G+, or on a third-party site, we will also have live feeds right on Slooh.com. That's going to be where the main presentation is. You can certainly watch it in those environments, but if you want to control feeds or interact with the panel, you're going to want to go to Slooh.com. In order to do that. Is your clock going to go off?
Yeah.
Appropriate time.
It will.
To start the event. Okay, the Slooh Show is going to begin in about 30 seconds. Okay, we're going to start pretty quick here. As soon as the live show begins, you'll see it on the home page. The live feed will click over. Okay. Hi everyone, this is Patrick Palucci with Slooh Space Camera. It's Thursday, April 25th at noon Pacific, 3 Eastern Daylight, 1900 UTC, and we're here today to provide you live coverage of the partial lunar eclipse that's taking place as we speak. We have a great group of people coming on to the panel today. If you're watching this on Slooh.com, you can interact with the panel by clicking the Slooh Conversations button, and we'll be monitoring it throughout the 90-minute presentation today. I'm on right now with Slooh engineer and outreach coordinator Paul Cox. Paul, how you doing today?
Yeah, very good. Thank you, Pat.
Great. What we're doing here, Paul's actually in the UK. I'm out here in Los Angeles, California, and we're looking right now at live feeds out of Dubai, courtesies of our new friends out there at the Dubai Astronomy Group in the United Arab Emirates. And we're fortunate enough to have one of the individuals come on and join us to talk more about their organization as well as talk about the live feeds that they're providing. We did have a few other feeds that we were hoping to provide from some other locations, specifically India and Cyprus, but unfortunately the weather conditions there are not cooperating well. And so those will be listed as feed offline. If you click on the arrow buttons on the home page of Slooh, you'll see them there. We also have some other feeds potentially out of the Canary Islands later in the broadcast of the moon. But the core presentation today is going to be on coming from Dubai with this feed we're seeing right now. And the eclipse itself, and we'll talk more about this in detail, actually has already begun. And we're going to be covering it. And you'll start, this is even though it's technically a partial lunar eclipse, it's not going to be as dramatic as some previous ones, given where the moon shadow, the Earth shadow on the moon and all that are taking place. But hopefully we should be able to see some activity and moon changing over the course of the show. Just a couple notes before we get rolling here officially. We will have Dr. Lucy Green on. For those of you in the UK, you probably would recognize Lucy from some of the programs she's on the BBC. Most recently, she's been on the Stargazing Live presentations in the Sky at Night, and she'll be coming on. She's a solar researcher, and she'll give us her take. We'll include a lot of the sun in this broadcast and talk about it and what's going on with solar activity, although we are focused on the moon for the main broadcast. Also, for those of you who have an iPad app, I want to make sure you guys know about our new iPad app that's available. Definitely download it. It's free in the iTunes store, and it's really a cool product. You have the ability to fly around the sky looking where all these great celestial objects are, but you can also book missions directly into the sky chart commanding one of our robotic space cameras for your collections. So you can be imaging the night sky with your own pics by commanding our robotic scopes. And for today, for instance, if you book a mission to the moon right out of your app, you're going to get part of the partial lunar eclipse image coming in. And all these images that come in are time-stamped. You know what they are, and you can keep them as a recording of the night sky. So it's your own personal sky. And we're really excited to have that out. And the best way to go and use the app is to go to Slooh's top missions. So that's what you guys should do with who are watching this program or on the homepage and have an iPad. That's something to do. Okay, so Paul, here we are. We're looking at a live shot out of Dubai, and we're looking at we're looking at the eclipse coming in. So, Paul, maybe you could give us a quick overview of what exactly is happening right now with the eclipse. I mean, what is going on that's causing this shadow on the moon?
Yeah. Okay, well, we can do that, Pat. We've got plenty of time this evening. We're going to go over this with Lucy Green as well. But to start off with, I really want to give a huge shout out to the guys down in Dubai. They've Hassan and Al. They've last minute. And we lost our other feeds, and these guys have literally come on board within 24 hours. So thank you, everybody down in Dubai, United Arab Emirates. And actually, with that, Pat, that's the first thing I'm going to explain to people. I'm sharing in now a global map. And what this map is denoting is where this lunar eclipse is visible from. Now, hopefully you can see this. So there's Africa here, there's India here, Russia up here, United States all the way over here in this grey area. Now, an eclipse is only visible at a certain point for a few hours usually, and you have to be facing the moon at that point to be able to see it. So anywhere in this white zone is going to be seeing the full partial eclipse. So in other words, they're going to see the entire event. This is a partial lunar eclipse. So if you're in that area, and where I'm pointing to now, that's Dubai, that's the United Arab Emirates. That's where our guys are now from the Dubai Astronomy Group, who are feeding us these great live images. Now, if you're in these grey areas here, and that's where our Canary Islands Observatory is, by the way, where I'm just pointing to in the hangout here, we'll get to see this partial lunar eclipse as the moon is rising. And this is at a certain point when it's called going into the umbral phase. And we're going to go into that in a bit more detail later. But the other thing that I want to point out to you is that if you're in this far left or far right grey area, in other words, in the Pacific or in North America, you don't get to see any of the eclipse because the moon hasn't risen by the time the eclipse has actually finished. So what's an eclipse then? Well, we all know that the moon orbits the Earth, and I'm showing in a nice little diagram here that we're going to talk about this as well a bit later on. We're going to go all the way back to the basics tonight, Pat. We're going to talk about lunar phases and the creation of the moon and stuff like that. And this little diagram just shows in here Earth's in the center. We've got sunlight coming in from the right-hand side. And over on the left, that's when a moon would be full. Now, a lunar eclipse, it can only take place on a full moon, on the day of the full moon. And that's because the eclipse is when the moon is opposite the Earth from the sun's perspective. And it's when the moon slowly travels into the Earth's shadow. So if you can imagine, here's the Earth, we've got the sunlight coming over here. The Earth, just like any other object in sorry, here's some beeping there in the background. The Earth, just like any other object, will cast shadows. And what a lunar eclipse is the moon traveling through that shadow. Now, there are two parts to the moon's shadow. This is what gets a little bit confusing, but we're going to go over this several times tonight. Pat, you got some feedback coming in there, mate?
Yeah, I'm sorry. I was doing some testing. Go ahead.
Okay, no, you know it's difficult. You can't talk over it. So look, this diagram here represents, Pat, the Earth's shadow. Now, this dark grey area in here, that's called the umbra, and it's the umbral shadow. Not a great word for me to say because I can't say my R's. But that's where all of the light from the sun is cut off. In other words, there's no light managing to creep around the Earth at all. And when the moon goes into the umbral shadow, that's when we get a total eclipse of the moon. If only part of the moon goes into that umbral shadow, then it's a partial lunar eclipse, and that's what we've got tonight. But this particular partial lunar eclipse is tiny. You can see on this diagram that it's only the very top part of the moon which is going to be entering that umbral shadow. Now, I've asked the guys down in Dubai, and that's what they've done. They've kind of zoomed in on that area of the moon for us, because when it reaches this umbral phase, we want to be keeping our eyes open to see if we can see this kind of curved shadow at the top of the moon. So that's what we're going to be keeping our eyes open for. But already you can see that the moon has entered what's called the penumbral shadow, and that's this outer grey ring, and that's where part of the sun's light is being shielded from the moon. So those are the different types of eclipse. We are going to talk about them a lot more when Dr. Lucy Green comes on. We're not going to. We deliberately wanted to cover this, even though it wasn't one of those absolutely spectacular full lunar eclipses that we've seen in the past. This is from a couple of years ago. This is 2011 when we covered it from Cyprus. This was a glorious thing. Now, when you have a total lunar eclipse, Pat, you get these beautiful colors coming out on the moon, but we're not going to see that tonight. It's far more subtle, it's far more distinctive in a way. We've really got to keep our eyes open for this gradual darkening of the moon. And then at a certain point tonight, I'll tell you what the times are in a second, we're going to see this tiny little bit right at the top of the moon with a dark shadow or a darker shadow. Now, it is going to be really, really difficult to see, but the guys from Dubai are doing their best to zoom in on that area so we can keep our eyes open for that. And I think we've got, haven't we? We've got one or two of the Dubai Astronomy Group guys coming on the show, Pat?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm going to be inviting him in here in about 5 minutes, and I believe Keith is going to be joining us. Keith Cobby, I believe. I hope I'm pronouncing his last name properly. He'll be joining us shortly and giving us an update directly from Dubai, which will be cool. We will also have Dr. Lucy Green on later on in about 12:30 Pacific, 3:30 Eastern, 19:30 UTC. Lucy will be joining us as well, and she can talk about all the stuff related to the sun and the moon, and that'll be fascinating stuff. If you're just joining us, we are pulling live feeds from Dubai. Our Cyprus and India feeds, unfortunately, the weather there is poor, and we're not going to be able to get anything out of there tonight. But fortunately, we have an awesome feed coming in from Dubai, so that's going to give us a good idea of looking for some of these changes in the moon shadow as the shadow hits. As Paul was alluding to, it's not going to be as dramatic as a total solar eclipse, which I believe is not going to happen until April 2014, I think is the next one. And we certainly will be covering it when it does happen. But we definitely wanted to cover these other events that take place because they are fascinating in their own right, and it helps, for those who are interested out there, to give you an idea of what's going on with the relationship between the sun, the Earth, and the moon. So we'll be following this for about 90 minutes. We're about 15 minutes into the show, and if we may be able to get some feeds out of the Canary Islands as well. But that's probably going to be much later in the show, depending.
Oh, excellent.
So we'll see where that
Sorry to interrupt, Pat, but the guys in Dubai have zoomed out on the moon, so we're now getting the full lunar disk showing in this live feed from Dubai. So don't forget, everybody, you've got to be on the home page to see these live images, and you can, unfortunately, we were hoping you were going to be able to select between several images tonight in India and Cyprus and a couple of other places, but we've had bad weather and ill health, unfortunately. People dropping out like flies on us, Pat, but I really cannot thank these guys at the Dubai Astronomy Group more than enough, because they stepped in literally with 24 hours notice, and they've got this live feed coming direct from us. And of course, the reason why Dubai is so well suited to this is if I just go back and share that map to you again, you'll be able to see just why. In fact, I've lost my ability to screen share, but I'll screen share this in a little bit later. Dubai is right in the center of that eclipse area where it's visible from. So they're going to see the whole eclipse. Not only do they see the whole eclipse, but the moon is very high up in the sky for them as well. So that's pretty cool. So.
Yeah, and guys, just a quick note. Again, I know some of you are watching this all over the web on various sites, perhaps like space.com or NatGeo or any of those types of sites. And you can certainly keep doing that. Paul will screen share in every so often maybe a shot of what's going on from the image feeds from the lunar eclipse. If you actually want to see the feeds and control them, you got to go to slooh.com to see them. You can still see the hangout box here as well, the panel.
Yeah, I'll show people. I'm showing people now, Pat. So if you're not watching on the Slooh homepage, this is the reason why we say you should watch it here, because you get the live feeds coming in here. There we've got Dubai 1. The guys down in Dubai might actually be sending us some other images, maybe some wide field of the kind of landscape and where they are, and we're looking forward to hearing from Keith Cobby exactly what their setup is down there and stuff like that. We may have the Tenerife, the Canary Islands telescopes coming online a little bit later. That's in the area where the eclipse is going on as the moon is rising. So we're really pointing the telescopes down at a very low angle there. But I'm just showing in on the screen now, this is our all-sky camera. This is a special camera, points directly up into the sky, shows a 180-degree view. The weather tonight in the Canary Islands is looking pretty pretty good. So we should be able to get the moon. It's a high altitude site. This is where the Slooh robotic telescopes are. High altitude site, nearly 8,000 feet. We actually have a horizon less than 0. Because we're so high up, we can actually see below the 0 altitude, which is pretty cool. But so that's going to be interesting to watch those a little bit later, Pat. But if you are on the home page, those are the little triangles that you click up here to flick between these feeds. And the guys in Dubai have gone back to that close-up view, so that's going to be fantastic if they can keep switching between this zoomed-in view. And in fact, you can see. You can see quite clearly that there's some darkening on the moon there,
yeah, you can,
which surprises me. I wasn't expecting that degree of darkening. Now, we need to see that image after image. We need to ask Keith whether they've got any clouds down there, exactly what kind of conditions they've got down there. I'm saying clouds in Dubai. I think that's fairly unlikely. But also, when you're on the home page, you get the Hangout. The Hangout is embedded down here, so you still get to see it. I've actually switched it off so I don't get any feedback. And you get the benefit of being able to press that little button there that says Slooh Conversations, and that's where you can ask us any questions. So please ask away there. I know Dr. Lucy Green is always fantastic at answering all sorts of questions about lunar eclipses and her speciality, the sun. So yeah, do please have a look on the home page. Flick between all of those. You can also, I believe, Pat, we've got the pin it button there, so if you press that pin it button, the current image will automatically be pinned to your Pinterest board. So yeah, that's enough for me, I think, Pat.
You got it. So I just invited in Keith from Dubai. So Keith, if you're listening to the show, you should see an invite. We're looking forward to you joining soon. And what we're doing here, if you're just joining us, we're pulling live feeds of the partial lunar eclipse, which is taking place. If you're in North America, you're not going to be able to see it. So that's why you come to places like Slooh to see it. And we're pulling them live from Dubai, who has an excellent front row seat to it. And we're looking for the darkening of the moon from the shadow of the Earth. So it's kind of cool how this is all going down. And this is actually not the first time we've pulled live feeds out of Dubai. Some of you might recall back in June 2011, we did an event with Google, the Google Doodle Lunar Eclipse event, and actually one of those feeds was from Dubai as well. So this is not our first time pulling feeds from Dubai. So it's kind of fun to go back there, and then clearly it's got nice clear weather tonight, so that's good. So Keith, I did invite you in, so hopefully you can join us from Dubai. I did get it out, so you should be good to go. And yes, Paul, you're right. They've been switching back and forth in 2 types of feeds. One is a close-up of the moon that we're seeing right now, and then we're getting also a zoomed-out one.
Hey, Pat, while we're waiting for Keith to join us, can I just share something with you?
Yeah, go ahead.
This is pretty cool. We talked about the app just now at the beginning of the show. Look, I'm sharing in now. This is my iPad that I'm linked to the screen share here. This is the Slooh app that we've got. So it's this virtual sky. It's absolutely brilliant. The quality might be a bit degraded because we're screen sharing in and stuff like that. But I just wanted to show you something, because if I do here, I can do a search for the moon. So moon search, and it'll automatically fly me to the moon. I'm just going to make my horizon transparent. There it is. But the thing I wanted to show you here is tonight. So there it is. It's coming up on the computer. If I click this, I want to show you over the last this month really, or from the beginning of New Moon, I've been booking a moon mission in the Slooh app. And this is what I've been getting. So these are all of the. So look, this is the youngest moon we've ever imaged at Slooh. This is a 2-day-old moon. So this is me. I booked up this moon mission. The Slooh telescopes in the Canary Islands took this image, and then the next day, or a few days later, I ordered another one, and the phase gets bigger, and then the next one, it gets a bit bigger. And you can see there's also a little bit of rotation in the moon as well as we step through each phase, and that's called libration. And I'm hoping that we can talk about that with Dr. Lucy Green a little bit later. But then we've got coming up, this is still This is a first quarter moon we got to on the 16th, and then on the 18th we're into the waxing gibbous phase. We're going to talk about those phases. That's a waxing gibbous moon as well. They're getting bigger and then slightly bigger. And then on the 22nd, that's one of my favorite images. I love the moon when it's kind of at that kind of phase. And then the last one is from last night. So this is from the Canary Islands Observatory. And you can see it's just not full. You can just see on this kind of lower limb that it's still got a slight shadow on it. And I'm hoping, in fact, I can show people now, look, if I say start mission, because I want to book one of the full moon ones. So I'm going to grab this, and let's see. Actually, I've forgotten my password there because my attachment isn't working. But that's as simple as it is. Right? So maybe I'll show people that a little bit later again.
Paul, what is your password, by the way? So I know.
Oh yeah, I'll just let everybody know that one. Yeah. But I just thought it was interesting, you know, because we often talk about the app, but we never actually show it to people before they start. So that's a free download, and there's this kind of virtual sky in there, and you can search for objects, and it tells you all of the information about it and stuff like that. So really cool. So maybe we'll have another look at that later, Pat.
Yeah, absolutely. And as I mentioned earlier in the show, if you book a mission today, you're going to get an Eclipse version of it, we hope, depending on the different views that we get. So it's something to think about as well, you iPad app users out there. So we're waiting for Keith to join. I did invite him in, Paul. I don't know if you have a way to connect with him offline. He should be able to connect via his profile in Google+. So you might want to let him know, if you can, that that's available to him.
Yeah, Pat, if you can take the reins for a couple of minutes, I'll just chase up Keith and check my email and stuff to see whether or not he's coming online for us. So.
Yeah, no problem. I'll hold the fort. Just be quick. Just be quick.
Tell us everything you know about lunar libration.
Yeah, exactly, man. You guys, without you and Bob
Pat, just
and Lucy.
take a look. Sorry to interrupt, but just take a look at that latest image from the guys in Dubai. Guys down there, Keith's got to come on because I need to thank him personally for this. You know, stepping in at 24 hours notice, and here they are. You know, we didn't have time for any testing or anything, and here they are providing these two fantastic, you know, images of the moon, this kind of whole lunar disk shot where we're seeing the shading, we're seeing this partial eclipsing as it goes into this umbral shadow, or the penumbral shadow. And then they're showing this tighter shot as well. So guys, hopefully you are listening down there. Keith, hopefully we can get you into the show. But if you can't get in for any reason, you guys are doing a fantastic job. So many, many thanks.
Yeah, this is awesome. And you can actually see some of the shading, it looks like, occurring already. Technically, I'm looking at my little chart here. It says the partial eclipse actually doesn't start till 1954 UT. So that's in about 20 to 30 minutes is when the partial eclipse begins, it says, and the greatest eclipse occurs at 20:07, so at the top of the hour.
Yeah, but we've got to be careful there, Pat, how we explain this to people, because let me just take you back to that diagram. When we say the partial eclipse starts, we mean when the moon goes into what's called the Earth's umbral shadow, which is where all of the sun's light is cut out. So the moon's still getting some reflected light and some light refracted kind of around the sun. But when we say the partial eclipse, that is when the moon, I'll just zoom in on this little diagram here, that's where the moon enters, just partially, in this particular case, the umbral shadow. So it's already, though, in the penumbral shadow. So we've already seen a little bit of darkening there. And it's, you know, things are not as straight lined as all this. These are fairly gradual changes as well, which is, I think, why we're seeing some of that. Got some feedback again there, Pat.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I'm testing. I'm always testing, man.
Okay,
go ahead. Sorry.
And yeah, so I've lost my track there, Pat. So let me chase Keith up. So.
Yeah, no problem, buddy. No problem. So if you're just joining us, guys, we are looking at live feeds of the lunar eclipse. The lunar eclipse feed is actually on Slooh.com, and we'll be screen sharing in here and there on the Hangout if you prefer to watch it there, where Paul and I are talking. But the Hangout box is actually also embedded on Slooh, so you can get the best of both worlds. If you have a question for us or for Lucy when she comes on, or Keith, just go to the Slooh conversation section, and you can ask a question there on the homepage. Also, if you want to keep updated on future events, we actually have a bunch of stuff happening over the course of the next 5 days or so. We have a Saturn opposition show on Sunday night of this week, the 28th. Actually, Bob Berman and Paul Cox will be on that show. It starts at 6:30 Pacific, 9:30 Eastern Daylight, 01:30 UTC, and you'll see these counting down on the homepage. So if you don't have a chance to write it down, just come to Slooh's homepage. You'll see it. We're also doing a live Comet ISON special show on Tuesday, the April 30th. You'll see that on the calendar already. And we have an annular solar eclipse coming on May 9th. So we'll be covering all those live. Also daily, we do daily audio, Sky Guy audio shows. You'll see those counting down as well. Those are updates really specifically for the app users who are trying to book missions in our app. You can learn more about specific objects that are listed in Slooh's top missions. And by booking a mission, you're basically commanding a Slooh space camera somewhere in the world to image your sky. So it's a new program that launched only about 10 days ago. We're really excited about it, and we're just kind of soft launching it now, but we're going to be, you'll probably be reading about it more and more as the months go on, as we start promoting it more. So anyway, Paul, I'm going to start inviting in Dr. Lucy Green right now.
Okay.
Her slot technically starts up in a few minutes. So Lucy, if you're listening, you should see an invite in a second here, and we'll bring Lucy in and get her take on what's going on here in just a second here. For those of you who don't know Lucy, she's actually been on a bunch of our main shows dealing with eclipses. She's been on a total solar eclipse just recently. She's been on our annular solar eclipse. Those are back last year, and she was on one of the total lunar eclipse actually in 2011 with the Google Doodle event.
Transit of Venus was a big one, wasn't it?
Oh yeah, so that's right. And she was on the Transit
of Venus. She joined us from Norway. Yeah, which is absolutely awesome. Pat, if you can just send another invite. I have just emailed Keith Cobby of the Dubai Astronomy Group, trying to get him into the Hangout, because we would love to hear more about their group down there, because they're just as passionate as we are about scientific outreach and getting astronomy out to people. And it's, I don't know, I know that Europe and the USA have got this problem of trying to encourage kids into science and technology careers now. And astronomy, is a fantastic way of doing that, Pat, because it's such a tactile, understandable science, isn't it? All of us can just watch these images tonight on the homepage and just be in awe of them. You don't have to know a huge amount about this stuff to really get a buzz out of what's going on. As Lucy Green comes in, and she's coming in, Pat, I'm going to check out the Slooh conversations, and I shall pass I'll pass some questions into you. So, hi, Lucy.
Hi, how are you?
Very well, thank you.
Hey, good, Lucy. Great. Thank you for joining us again. It's great to have you back on one of our shows.
Yeah, it's great to be here. I'm looking forward to seeing the views of the eclipse.
Yeah, awesome. So I just want to quickly introduce you. If you guys don't know Dr. Lucy Green, she's actually a solar researcher out of the UK at the Mullard Space Science Laboratory at the University College London. And she's been on a lot of the BBC programming out there. Specifically recently, she's been on Stargazing Live and The Sky at Night. You might have seen Lucy on The Sky at Night. I did see something, Lucy, on DA14 that you did just recently. I don't know, for some reason we get blacked out here in the U.S. They don't let us see it live or something. But I did catch a clip of it. So, yeah, that was awesome. But anyway, Lucy, again, thanks for joining us. Appreciate it.
Yeah, it's good to be here. Yeah, we get some good views of we got some good views of DA14 as it whizzed past. So it's a shame that you didn't get to see that.
I know. For some reason, they block out us Americans out of your programming. But anyway, here we are. We're looking at live feeds from Dubai again. I was just mentioning recently, Lucy, if you recall, the 2000 lunar eclipse we did, 2011 lunar eclipse we did, the total solar with Google. That was actually one of the feeds out of there was actually out of Dubai as well. So we're doing another Dubai feed again. So it's kind of funny that it's happening tonight again.
Pat, may I just cut in with a few questions? And there's a few easy ones that I'm going to answer because it's about the app and stuff like that. But
right.
Then there's one that's really, really appropriate for Lucy. And by the way, welcome everybody. We've got viewers tonight from Australia, Asia, North America, South America, Europe. This event is timed perfectly, it seems, just for about everybody. So welcome everybody who's joining us. The Slooh app is going to be available for Android. That's our second phase of development, you'll be pleased to hear. And then coming up, that we've got two questions here, Lucy. One is about how often lunar eclipses take place, but the other one is very much up your street. During times when we experience class M and X CMEs, these solar flares that you've talked about before, coronal mass ejections that you've spoken about before, is there any visual difference in luminosity of the moon?
Oh, during solar flares?
Yeah.
That's a good question. So,
I mean, does the sun's brightness change? I mean, it must do to an extent when it's going through various cycles, does it?
It does. So because of course we see the moon because of reflected sunlight. The moon doesn't emit any light of its own. So everything we see has its origin in the light coming from the sun. Now, during the solar cycle, which is an 11-year timescale over which the sun's activity varies. So the sun has, like you said, solar flares and other forms of activity, and the frequency of activity, how often they occur, varies with 11 years. So the sun goes from being quite quiet to very active to being quiet again. And actually, the visible light output of the sun doesn't vary very much over that time. It's only by a fraction of a percent, which means that then the amount of light that the moon won't vary very much either. So I wouldn't expect to be able to see the moon changing in brightness because of the change of the sun. And that's also something just a flare as well, because the sun output visible light just doesn't vary very much. It's exciting because the sun has is able to emit light at wavelengths that's other than light. So, for example, ultraviolet light, X-rays, and those wavelengths.
Hey, Lucy, I'm sorry to interrupt you. You were cutting out a little bit. The transmission seemed a little jarbled. Paul, were you getting that as well?
Yeah, so you're on Wi-Fi, Lucy?
Yeah, I'm afraid I couldn't get the hard wire with the network.
Okay.
It got down, and I'm not sure
might be
why
worthwhile
that's
closing down anything that's maybe gobbling up bandwidth, the homepage or anything like that. So I'll share in any diagrams that we talk about directly into the Hangout.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, anything that might be sucking up bandwidth would be a good idea if you're doing the Wi-Fi deal. So that'd be great. So your audio will come in a little bit better, I think.
We've got people joining us from Florida. We've got people in from Romania, Lithuania, everywhere. It is such a fantastic timing of this show for everybody around the world. And one of the questions that is in there, it was about the visibility of this. Now, at the beginning of the show, I shared in this map. Lucy might be able to explain a little bit more about this, but this is a global map. So we've got Africa, Europe up here, India, Dubai, where the guys from the Dubai Astronomy Group are feeding us these fantastic images. Guys, you are doing such a fantastic job down there. They are perfectly placed to view this eclipse. They get to see the entire eclipse But they also get to see it when the moon is very high up in the sky. From the Canary Islands Observatory, the Slooh Observatory, just off the west coast of Africa, we're going to be seeing it in its umbral stage just as the moon is rising. Anybody, unfortunately, who's in this grey zone at the end, which includes somebody asking about the Caribbean, North America, Pacific, you don't get to see any of the eclipse, I'm afraid. And one person's actually said in there that they're somewhere in the United States and they never get to see one of these events. And Lucy, we're a small island, we're both in the UK, we're quite used to that as well, aren't we? We don't get many of these lunar eclipses or the solar eclipses especially visible, which comes back to the other question, how often do eclipses both lunar and solar occur?
Yeah.
How often can we see them?
Well, with solar eclipses, you can expect us to have a couple of eclipses every year. But by that I mean both solar eclipses and total solar eclipses. So time from our view, and then times when the moon completely blocked out our sun from the moon. And of course, the eclipses that we're most interested in are the eclipses. And so they're the ones where you can spectacular.
Hey, Lucy, I apologize for interrupting. Yeah, you might have to log out. You may have to be forced to log out and restart your computer or something, because it's really jarbly. We can't. Unfortunately, no, we can't hear anything that you're saying. It's just coming out robotic. So maybe there's a way you could maybe jump out and then jump back in, or shut down your computer again and come back in, something like that. So hopefully that will clear up some of the bandwidth issues that you're currently being hit by. So as Dr. Green gets situated with her bandwidth, I just want to give you guys a quick update. We're here live looking at the partial lunar eclipse with feeds from Dubai. We want to give out special thanks to our friends out in Dubai who are providing this feed. Keith Cobby, I'm hoping he can join us. He's out there in Dubai trying to join in as well, so maybe they can come in. Keith is from the Dubai Astronomy Group in the United Arab Emirates. I believe the person imaging this event is...
Sorry, just to interrupt. I've just had an update from Keith. They did warn us about this. He said bandwidth very poor here in the desert. So they've kind of gone out to this nice dark sky site in the desert. So thank you very much, guys. You prioritized uploading the images for us and keeping those coming in. Keith, and the other guys down there, Hassan, we will definitely tie up again after this event, so maybe we can support some of your events as well. But you've done and are doing an absolutely stunning job for us tonight as we see these live images, Pat, coming in with this very definite darkening on the, I think it's the northern limb of the moon. The Dubai image is rotated slightly, but I think north is approximately kind of 10 o'clock on the lunar limb, and that's the area that's kind of coming closest into this umbral, this darker shadow of the Earth. So yeah, thank you everybody down there in the astronomy group in Dubai.
Yeah, it's awesome. This feed's great. You can see, Paul, I'm looking on the homepage right now, slooh.com. Maybe you could screen share it in really quick.
Yep.
It looks like there is a shadowing of the moon. Is that part of it, or is that too early to even make that call?
No, we've been seeing this, and so we know that it's not a transitory effect like clouds going over. We've seen it developing from the very beginning. Now, it's quite difficult because a shadow obviously is grey, and the moon is rather grey as well. So we're kind of trying to see different shades of grey, but we can definitely see. I'm going to point in the Hangout now. I've got the homepage image opened up. I'm pointing here. You can just see there's a kind of slight area in this portion of the moon, probably this last quarter, which is a lot darker. And it's this area up here which let's see the timings again of this particular eclipse. It is at its maximum Well, actually, it's gone. Has it? 1939. No, we've got another 10 or 15 minutes, Pat, before it enters its umbral phase. So everybody, you've got to keep a really good lookout on this top area of the moon where I'm pointing. It's in this kind of darker area at the moment. We might see a smaller portion go very, very dark. So that's going to be in about 10 or 15 minutes time, and it will last for approximately, what are we looking at here? About 26 minutes. All right, so at 5 to the hour, 6 minutes to the hour, we're going to see quite a distinctive darkening. I'm really quite surprised at how much darkening we're seeing on this already, Pat, because I was trying to downplay this lunar eclipse to Pat.
I know.
By saying, look, this is a partial eclipse. It's more like a penumbral eclipse, which is this thing of when it goes into this, this kind of lighter shade of grey. It's not a very distinctive shadow. It's this kind of secondary shadow. I'll share that diagram in again because a picture paints 1,000 words with this stuff.
I mean, so, Paul,
but it's great. It's great. We're seeing some great differences here, Pat, aren't we? So.
That's the difference between a salesperson and a scientist. A scientist kind of guy will undersell it. The sales guy is going to oversell it. So I was sitting there saying, "Oh, this is going to be fabulous." You're sitting there telling everyone, "Oh, this is nothing." So I'm glad that we're kind of
an awful lot also, Pat, on this. Is about how good the imaging is as well, because typically with a lunar eclipse, throughout the eclipse when you're taking images of it, the moon obviously is incredibly bright to start off with because it's a full moon, so the exposure times are quite low and stuff like that. But as the moon darkens throughout the lunar eclipse, you normally have to start increasing the exposure time so that you can get it well. Now, if the guys down in Dubai did that, it would kind of cancel out a lot of the shadow that we're actually seeing. So it's testament to the guys down there in Dubai just how well they're setting this up and imaging this, because these kind of subtle variations in shade could easily be lost just by a little bit of changing in the camera setup and stuff like that. But I'm really I'm breathtaken with what these guys have managed to do. Let's just remind everybody, we were hoping for 2 lots of feeds from Cyprus today. We were hoping from a feed from a Slooh member in India. Unfortunately, Nirmal's ill, so he couldn't help us out with this one. We were also hoping for a feed from South Africa as well. But the attrition rate, because of weather and ill health and stuff like that, was just appalling. And unfortunately, this hit us just 2 days ago. So suddenly, we were left with this great event to kind of popularize science and astronomy, and we were left without any live images. And I sent out some hurried emails on Monday or Tuesday, I think it was, and the guys from the Dubai Astronomy Group replied straight away, said, yes, we'd be delighted to help. And that's exactly what they've done, and they've got all of their gear ready and operational within kind of 12 hours. It's awesome. Just absolutely spectacular.
Well, Paul, what they've done down there. The timing's pretty good. We should talk to them more about doing some other stuff. It seems like the timing out there would be good with Canary, and we could coordinate some shows.
Well, the other thing that I've already talked to the guys down there about is, for them, they do a lot of kind of outreach activity with the general public and stuff like that. They hold regular meetings. So I've already discussed with them that they can use Slooh's robotic telescopes in the Canary Islands to actually have some live images on maybe some of their public events. So that's going to be pretty cool as well. So, it's always a pro quo on these things. When people help us out, we always try and help back.
Yeah,
so,
in fact, just a quick note, if you do have a facility anywhere in the world and you want to participate in any of these live broadcasts, just send Paul an email.
Coxey at slooh.com, COXY at slooh.com. And Pat, we're looking for people to help us out with the solar annular eclipse. I think that's next month, isn't it? In May?
It is May 9th here for U.S. It's May 9th. So Yeah,
oh, wow,
that'd be great.
Pat, sorry to interrupt again, but we are just minutes away now, 10 minutes away from when the moon enters its partial phase. So at the moment it's in its penumbral phase, but in 10 minutes it's going to be entering its partial phase. And you can already see on this image, there's a kind of, the moon looks flat. I'll just share this in. You need to be looking at this on the Slooh homepage, so you can be kind of zooming in on this yourself and, you know, looking at the different views. But can you see this?
Oh,
it looks like
yeah,
there's a flat
right.
zone on the lunar limb. So that's kind of it, really kicking in. So guys down in Dubai, I really cannot give you enough praise for how well you're imaging.
Right, you're seeing it right now.
Yeah, these events are not easy to image. You've got pointing at the telescope, you've got weather, you've got electrical supplies, and of course now these guys, they've gone all the way out into the desert, and I don't know what kind of broadband connection they're using, but they're giving us really regular image uploads. So it's absolutely brilliant. But everybody keep an eye open. It is exactly 10 minutes time we're expecting to see that northern limb flatten out even more with an even darker shadow, where just that little portion of the lunar limb enters what we call the umbral shadow. So,
in fact, I'm just going to tweet out really quick, and Lucy's trying to get back in, guys, so we apologize for the technical issue with Lucy's feed. Lucy, I see you kind of coming in. Are you in? Are you back in yet?
Well, I think I'm here. Can you hear me okay this time?
yes. Yeah, and that's absolutely perfect. We can't see you,
Brilliant.
but we can hear you perfectly.
In fact, I think that's what we did. Oh, go ahead, Lucy. Sorry.
I was going to say, I went and got a different computer, and it doesn't have a camera on it. So hopefully, so I apologise for my earlier problems, but I'm back here with sound.
Great.
All right, that's the most important thing.
Well, Pat,
yeah, exactly.
Can we re-step then into Lucy? Are you able to see the images at the moment on the home page?
I can. So I've
You
got
can.
a feed in the Google
Good.
Hangout, which is fantastic.
Okay, well, it's entering its partial phase in just under 10 minutes' time. But can we step back to that all-important question that we asked before? And that is, how often do lunar and solar eclipses occur? And then at another point in the show, I did promise people that we'd go right back to basics tonight to explain why eclipses occur, when they do, and in particular why they don't occur every single month. But maybe you can talk a little bit about those subjects.
Sure. So for the frequency, we're looking at perhaps 1.5 to 2 eclipses a year, and that's for the lunar eclipses and also for the solar eclipses as well. But of course, for the solar eclipses, that's including both the partial eclipses and the total eclipses. So that's when the moon either partially blocks the sun or fully blocks the sun. And most people, I'm sure, will be more excited by having a total solar eclipse when the sun is perfectly blocked out by the moon, and then you have the atmosphere of the sun revealed once the bright, dazzling disk of the sun is hidden. And those total eclipses happen once every, well, roughly 18 months. And then, as you were saying earlier on, this can be happening anywhere in the world. So the chances of you having one right in your area are really rare. So the last one we had in the UK was in 1999, and it was cloudy, of course, we didn't get to see it. And it's many years.
Part of the course, really, isn't it?
Yeah, that's why Slooh is just great to have. No matter what the weather.
I don't think I would have ever seen a lunar eclipse or a lot of the things that we cover, the near-Earth asteroids and all sorts of things, if it wasn't for doing these events. So.
Yeah.
I know, exactly. You guys in the UK are our best customers. That's what I like.
Yes.
Yeah, because I think probably Ireland probably beats us as far as cloud is concerned. But yeah, it's a close run thing, that's for sure.
Yeah, I can see the cloud out the window right now.
So look, you guys, really quick. I'm looking at the Dubai One feed, and you can see that they've zoomed in on the moon where the shadow is being cast. It looks like. You see that, Paul?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, hopefully they're going to go back to the wide view when it just starts its partial phase. You know, this is when the moon's disk goes into the umbral shadow. But I'm hoping they're going to go out to that, because I did think I saw maybe in the last image they gave us, a slight colouring. Now, I didn't think that there was going to be any colouring on the moon tonight. You usually get, I'll show you what we normally get if you have a total eclipse of the moon. You get these beautiful peachy red kind of pinkish colours, and this is one that we covered from Cyprus just in 2011. So this is the image that I took from it down there. But I wasn't expecting, I don't know, Lucy, if you've got any experience on this, but I wasn't expecting to see any colour in a partial lunar eclipse when the moon is still in the penumbral shadow.
I agree with you. I wasn't expecting to see any colour either, and that's what separates out for me the total lunar eclipses and the partial, because there's still sunlight falling onto the moon, which I think sort of prevents us from seeing that lovely colour.
That's right.
When the moon's in the umbra, it's totally in the Earth's shadow, and at that point you've just got a little bit of light leaking from the sun coming through the Earth's atmosphere and being filtered. So
and I'm just looking at the image now, Lucy. I suspect it was wishful thinking. My eyes. I've been looking at a computer monitor too long today. Yeah, it doesn't look like there is any colour. I just thought I may have seen a little bit of a hint of colour, but how close are we? We are 3 minutes away from it entering this umbral phase. Lucy,
yeah, and you can see it.
Absolutely. You can see it really quite clearly. Lucy, I'll put up a diagram. I'll screen share in this diagram, and I did try and give a kind of layman's explanation of a partial and when the moon goes into the penumbral shadow and the umbral shadow. Do you think you could kind of flesh that out from a professional point of view for us?
Yeah, well, I'll do my best. So it is hard to conceptualize, because you think about an object casting a shadow and you just think about an object casting one kind of shadow.
Yeah.
But actually the shadow cast by the Earth into space has two components. So it has the very dark center where no sunlight is able to get to. And then it has this ring around the edge where some of the sun's light is blocked out, but not all of it. And actually, if you play with some sort of, if you start to draw the sun and then the Earth and then the moon on a piece of paper, you can follow the path of the light. And when you do that, you can start to convince yourself. So if anyone's listening and they have a piece of paper, I'd urge them to do some sketches. And that shows you that there is the region in the center where no sunlight can get to, and a region around the edge where some can. So that's why you get the dark umbra in the center and the lighter shadow, the penumbra, around the edge. And then just depending on where the moon is moving, it might cut right the way through and pass through the the penumbra, then the umbra, and then out through the penumbra again. Or it might just clip through the penumbra. So it just depends on that alignment and where the moon is in its orbit around us.
So when you say, though, that when the moon passes into the umbra or in the umbral shadow, there's no moonlight, why then do we see the moon, that gorgeous peachy red colour, on a total lunar eclipse when the moon is wholly within that umbral shadow?
Yeah, purely because the Earth has an atmosphere, and the atmosphere of the Earth acts a bit like a lens, and it bends just a little bit of the sunlight that is skimming through the atmosphere, and instead of continuing on a straight line when it would then go on to miss the moon, it gets curved a little bit, it gets bent, and it comes in and falls on the moon. And the reason it's red is because although the sun's light is made up of all the colours of the rainbow that together make up white light, not all of the colours make it through. So the blue light gets scattered out of the way, and it's the red light that then makes it through to make the moon look this lovely peachy pinky
I see.
colour.
So when we say there's no sunlight getting into the umbra, would it be true to say that there's no direct sunlight entering that umbral shadow? Right.
Yes.
So it's still getting this refracted light coming in.
Yeah.
And hey, we've got Keith joining us, Pat.
Is that Keith? Hi, Keith, can you hear us? We're trying to get a hold of here. We have Keith Cobby, who's out of Dubai, who's providing us these spectacular live feeds. Keith, we didn't expect you to come in, but it's great to have you in. Keith is actually providing these out from his Dubai astronomy group. And Keith, can you hear us okay?
No, we got no sound there, Pat. So let me just cut in, Pat, just by saying that the time now is 5 minutes to the hour. We're actually now within the first minute of the partial eclipse. This is when the moon's limb is just cutting in to that umbral shadow which Lucy was just talking about. So Lucy, I hope you can see these live images from Dubai, and it's really quite distinctive, isn't it?
It really is. I'm really impressed to see these pictures. It's very, very distinct darkness on the edge of the moon.
I think what surprised me most, I hope you managed to see some of the earlier images, but there was a definite shadow cast over a quarter of that area of the moon during the penumbral phase, and we'll see it obviously in the second half of this as well. It's not quite as distinct as it was now. Maybe the guys have had to increase the exposure time a little, but did you see that? Because I really wasn't expecting to see any of that kind of really subtle shading.
Yeah, I've been quite surprised at everything I've seen so far, actually. And but I think what can make it tricky with the lunar eclipse...
That's normal for Slooh.
What can make it tricky with the lunar eclipse is that it is so gradual.
Yes.
It's the opposite of a solar eclipse, where you blink and you risk missing everything. With the lunar eclipse, you've got what, 3 hours, and the thing happens very gradually. So changes are very subtle, and you have to really keep your eyes open to pay attention to what's happening.
And this is actually. This is a fast one as well tonight. I mean, the partial phase is only lasting, 25 minutes. That's really, really quick, and that's just to remind everybody the moon is just clipping into that really dark shadow caused by the Earth, rather than kind of fully entering it and going the full distance across it, which is when we normally see a full lunar eclipse. So Pat, looks like Keith's tried to pop in again. Keith Cobby from the Dubai Astronomy Group, who are providing these fantastic images for us. Keith, can you hear us?
Yeah, I don't know if Keith is hearing us right now, but Keith, as soon as you're able to get your audio working, we can bring you into the Hangout here. Just a quick note, we're pulling live feeds of the partial lunar eclipse right from Dubai, thanks to Keith Cobby and his group from the astronomy community out there in Dubai. We're also on with Dr. Lucy Green, a British solar researcher out at the Muller Space Laboratory. And Lucy's been on a bunch of our shows in the past. You may have seen her on our other eclipse broadcasts, both solar and lunar, but also on the Transit of Venus broadcast. So we're really appreciative of her coming back on. And we also have Paul Cox from Slooh on with us. He's our engineer. And you're talking with me as well, Patrick Palucci from Slooh. If you're watching this on the Slooh homepage, you can control any of our feeds. Just a quick note, we do have a new iPad app out there for you iPad users, and it's a really cool product where you can go and book missions right out of an interactive sky chart to command a Slooh space camera. So you can image your sky. We actually did a quick demo on it earlier in the show before Lucy came on, and we'll probably do another one later in the show as well. Also, we do have a membership program to Slooh. It's a traditional program that's really targeted to advanced users, people who are very interested in full control of a robotic space camera. They can do that as well. It's obviously more expensive, but if you're a casual user, I highly recommend the iPad app. It's a really inexpensive way to do Slooh, fun, interactive, and you get access to all our programming. Right now, if you're on the homepage, we're looking here at the partial phase. It's a fascinating image. I mean, we were a little worried that you weren't going to see much today, given where we are with the shadow, but we are really seeing the shadow really well, so we're really stoked about that. Also, just a quick note about our programming in general. If you come to Slooh's homepage, you'll see shows always counting down. And we actually have a bunch of shows in the near term. We have a Saturn opposition show taking place Sunday night. at 6:30 Pacific, 9:30
That's going to be
Eastern.
really cool, Pat. By the way, I'm just pointing on the portion of the homepage down here in my screen share. This is where the upcoming shows are in there. And Saturn this week, in between the clouds, we had a bit of cloud this week, but we have been seeing some absolutely popping images of Saturn. It's so well placed for us at the moment. Saturn opposition means it's closest to the Earth, so it's big in the sky, but also because of Saturn's tilt, we get to see the rings from a slightly different angle, and they are very open for us. So Saturn basically is tilted very much towards Earth at the moment, which is why it looks absolutely superb at the moment. So yeah, that show on Sunday, Pat, got high hopes for that. Some really great views of the gas giant Saturn.
Right, and we got another show. We usually do these Comet ISON shows every month, and the next one actually is scheduled for Tuesday, so we'll do an update on that, where we'll pull live feeds coming of Comet ISON, so you can kind of see it progressing throughout the year as it comes closer and closer to us. So it's always fun to do those shows, and we do a lot of other stuff. And of course, we've got the annular solar eclipse on May 9th, and I know, Lucy, you're not going to be able to join us for that one, but we will have a bunch of panelists on, and it's going to be a fascinating show as well. So, so Lucy, what's going on with the sun these days? Maybe we should talk a little bit about the sun, because it looks like activity is starting to pick up a bit.
Yeah, I'm always happy to talk about the sun. So the sun has just been really acting strangely in the last few years. And at the moment we are at, we think, solar maximum, which is a time when the sun is producing a lot of explosions and eruptions that come from these dark sunspots on the surface. And when we look at the number of sunspots over time, their number varies, and they rise and fall over roughly 11 years. So very few sunspots, or maybe none at all, to very many, and then back down to zero again over 11 years. And so we've been watching the number of sunspots steadily increase, and along with that has gone lots of explosions and eruptions in the sun's atmosphere. But the number didn't rise very quickly at all. And we were trying to predict when solar maximum would be reached, and it just didn't come when we thought it was going to. So we thought it would be here in 2011, it didn't arrive. So we thought 2012, it didn't arrive. And now here we are in 2013, and we're still not exactly sure. There's a lot of argument in my community about whether we have indeed reached solar maximum or not. So that's a fantastic picture of the sun you're showing there, the sun's atmosphere. Yeah. And all those bright patches are hot gases that are trapped above these sunspot regions. So the fact that you can see lots of those patches means the sun is quite active. And I was watching a lovely sunspot region that's been forming over the last few days. It's just rotating towards the right-hand limb of the sun now. So the sun is still, it is still active, but just not as active as we thought it was going to be. It's taken us by surprise.
I mean, I know as a solar researcher, you probably like it more active, but is that a bad thing that it's not active, or does it not matter?
Well, yeah, it is a good thing that it's not too active. So you're absolutely right. For me, it makes me slightly sad because I want to see lots of eruptions and explosions. That's what I study in my research, and I love to have really good events. And the thing about the sun is that it's so visually beautiful as well as scientifically fascinating. And every time it does something, it gives us these amazing images. But the explosions and the eruptions do have an impact on the Earth. And so it is better for us if large events don't happen. We have a natural shield from the sun in the form of the Earth's own magnetic field, but very big events from the sun can sort of punch their way through this magnetic shield of ours and cause problems on the ground. So the most famous one actually is one that happened with the Quebec national grid in 1989, where the sun was able to punch through our shield and caused problems with Quebec national grid, and brought it down in 1989. And that's one of the worst case scenarios we've had. But
and since that time, actually, Lucy, we've been covering a lot of this. We covered a bit of it on our End of the World show last year. I don't know if any of our viewers tonight joined us, but we had last year the end of the world live on Slooh. We were a bit disappointed. We woke up on Saturday morning and nothing had happened, but we still gave it some good coverage anyway. But a lot of questions were about that at that time, about coronal mass ejections and how it can affect us. And of course, in our digital economies now, if the computers go down, if we've got no electricity, food doesn't get to the shops. Even if food does get to the shop, you can't pay for it because you don't have cash. You've got credit cards. But since that big Quebec incident, I certainly know this in North America and in a lot of Europe, electricity companies have been making changes to the infrastructure to have redundant transformers, because it's the transformers that get damaged. Those are the things, the cables, the overhead cables are the thing that pick up this energy from the sun, generates too much voltage, it whizzes down and blows the transformers up. That's what happened in Quebec. But since that time, that was a really big wake-up call. And the electricity companies are certainly doing quite a lot to protect us against those large coronal mass ejections.
Yeah, you're right. There's a lot of work in protecting us. So people don't need to be worried, even though there are effects. They're being looked at, and the sun is monitored all the time, every second, every minute, every day. And we are on the lookout for potential problems that the sun can cause.
Right. Hey,
can I just cut in and point out a couple of things? One is you can see on the Dubai feed on the homepage, it is so dark, that portion of the moon now, and we've got another 20 minutes or so of the partial phase. So don't forget, everybody, this is a partial lunar eclipse, not a total lunar eclipse, a partial lunar eclipse, and it's actually a small partial lunar eclipse. Which brings me on to a question that has arisen on the Slooh homepage. People have been asking when the other eclipses are, or whether there are other eclipses this year. And as Pat's already said, we're going to be covering the annular solar eclipse on the 10th of May. Then there are another 2 lunar eclipses this year, but both of those are what are called penumbral lunar eclipses, and those are when it just goes through that outer shadow, so it doesn't even have this tiny partial phase that we're getting tonight. And then at the end of the year, what I think is going to be an amazing event to watch. Lucy, I don't know whether you're going away to actually visit this, but there's a peculiar thing called a hybrid solar eclipse, which is on November the 3rd. Are you going down to see that?
Do you know, I can't go to see it, I don't think.
No, you're going to miss that.
I know, and it's such an unusual event, isn't it?
They are very rare.
Special events.
I still haven't quite got my head around exactly the physical relationship that can create it. I think it starts off with an annular eclipse, then it goes into total, but I think what makes it a hybrid is that it doesn't go back into an annular. Is that correct?
I think so. I think it is that it goes from one to the other, and you're right. It is a difficult one to get your mind around, because as the shadow sweeps across the Earth, people at the start of the path will see the annular, but then by the time the shadow has swept across for the full, it's changed. So it's about the curvature of the so it's about how much of the sun is covered up during the time that the moon is passing. So
there's some very, very unique geometry going on there, which is why those things are so rare. Pat, somebody has just re-asked the question. When we lost Lucy earlier, we couldn't hear her properly. They're asking maybe we could cover that question again, and that is during times when we experience class M and X CME solar winds, are there visual differences in the luminosity of the moon? If you remember that question, Lucy.
That was a really good question, and it turns out that so we see the moon because of reflected sunlight. So it's absolutely fair to think that when the sun produces a solar flare, which is a sudden intense burst of light, that then there's more light falling on the moon, and we see it to be brighter. But it turns out that the sun's visual brightness just doesn't change that much, only by a tiny fraction of a %. Right. So
it's very hard to detect. Turns out it's very hard to suddenly increase how much visible light the sun produces. So we don't see any change in brightness of the moon during one of these flares. It turns out that actually, if you had eyes that could pick up X-rays or ultraviolet light that the sun emits, so the picture you showed of the sun earlier was an ultraviolet light picture of the sun. Now, the ultraviolet and the X-rays, so like you show here, if a solar flare was to happen in that wavelength of light, you would get a massive increase in brightness. It would totally overwhelm the picture, become much, much brighter. So at these wavelengths, there's a big difference, but just not at visible. So not at the wavelengths our eyes can detect.
And I suspect from Earth, Lucy, as well, with minor changes in luminosity like that, frankly, any changes in how higher altitude you're making observation or a measurement, how clear the atmosphere is, would actually kind of overwhelm the kind of fine measurements that would be required in any case.
It's definitely better to go into space, and make these measurements above the atmosphere. Which, of
course, is where those images that I was sharing in, and don't forget, Dr. Lucy Green is do you call yourself a solar scientist or a solar researcher, or?
I think a solar scientist. I
have
to say, I can vary how I call myself, because I work in a space science laboratory, so sometimes I just call myself a space scientist. So I think I like that title. But I only look at the sun.
Well, you're working with this kind of image all the time, aren't you? And these are from the space telescopes, and there are a number of space telescopes devoted solely to solar observation now, aren't there?
There are, and we're very lucky at the moment. And it comes back to what we were talking about earlier, that because the sun has a real impact on us, it is a really important object to study. We want to know if our electricity is going to go down. We want to know if our satellites are going to be affected. So it is important. It's important for society to study the sun, as well as important to study our closest star, that then tells us something about how all the stars operate across the universe. So it's wonderful, because there's so many applications. And have you heard about the mission called Solar Orbiter that's going to go really, really close to the sun? And this is a European Space Agency mission. So we're so keen to know how the sun works that we're going to send some spacecraft. One actually is a European one called Solar Orbiter, and then there's an American one called Solar Probe Plus. And they're going to go very close to the sun, inside the orbit of Mercury, on these sort of daredevil missions, on these Icarus-like missions to get close to the sun. We'll have to protect it from the heat, but we'll study the sun close up, and we'll be sitting directly in all these emissions that come from the sun. So, 2017 is the launch date for Solar Orbiter, so we've still got a few years yet.
Definitely one to look forward to. But Pat, can I just pop in a couple of answers to questions there? People have been asking quite specific questions about when's the next lunar eclipse visible from North America and stuff like that. Lucy, I could potentially embarrass you if I asked you one of those questions, and I don't expect you to be a fountain of all knowledge. If you were in X town in North America, when's the next lunar eclipse visible? But I would just point everybody to go into Google, just do a search for NASA eclipse, and you'll be taken to it's actually eclipse.gsfc.nasa.gov, and they've got all of the eclipses there for the year. If you click on, they've got great little PDF documents that show you a map of where it's visible. What you're looking for is, I'll just remind you, screen sharing, what you're really looking for is where you are in these kind of maps. If you're in the white area for any eclipse, you're going to be able to see the eclipse. If you're in the light grey areas, you're going to see it when the moon or the sun is rising or setting. If you're in the dark grey areas, unfortunately you don't get to see it at all. Here's a question for you though, Lucy, and I think people who have just heard me read out when the eclipses are this year may have twigged that there's a relationship. They're asking what occurs more frequently, a lunar or a solar eclipse?
Well, they're related because
exactly.
and you know, it took me a while to sort of really realise this because I was so focused on solar eclipses for so many years. You know, my goal was to see a solar eclipse, and it's only more recently that I've become a fan of lunar eclipses because they're beautiful in their own right. But if you have a solar eclipse when the moon is in alignment between the Earth and the Sun, so the moon comes between the Earth and the Sun, it's also then 2 weeks later going to be in alignment on the other side of the moon so that it passes through the Earth's shadow. So they're related in that when the moon's orbit is just right, it crosses in between us and the Sun, and then it goes and it also goes through the Earth's shadow. So yeah, you're right, they are related.
But that actually maybe prompts the next question then, which is, if we know that the moon is orbiting Earth, so every single month it's going through, every 28 whatever days, it's passing between the Earth and the Sun when we get a new moon. Why don't we get a solar eclipse every month, and at full moon, why don't we get a lunar eclipse every month?
You know, it would be fantastic if that happened, wouldn't it?
It would, wouldn't it? Wow.
So if the orbits were just right, that could happen, but it would need the moon to be orbiting in exactly the same plane around us as we are around the Sun. So thinking about sort of flat disks, but that's not the case, unfortunately. The moon's orbit is tilted with respect to the orbit that we go around the Sun, which means that most of the time the moon is a little bit above the Sun or a little bit below, and likewise above or below the Earth's shadow. It's only those couple of times a year that the orbits line up so that the moon is directly in between the Earth and the Sun, and then directly, or more or less directly, in the Earth's shadow.
And even then, in a year like this year, which is actually considered to be a really poor year, we don't actually have a total lunar eclipse at all of the moon. And it's only this hybrid solar at the end of the year as well, although we do have this annular solar eclipse. So, you know, the timings haven't really worked out for us, or those inclined planes, the geometry of all three objects hasn't quite worked out for us to give us the most spectacular types of eclipses this year. But I must say, I am still stunned. The guys down in Dubai, they look like they've got a little bit of cloud now, but we're in the last, 5 minutes, I believe, of this partial phase. So this is when I'm just having a quick look at the timings. I think it finishes at something like 21 minutes past the hour. So we've got another 4 minutes of what's called the partial phase of this lunar eclipse, and you can see on the home page the Dubai One feed from the Dubai Astronomy Group down there. You can just see the very top of the moon here is dark. It's in total shadow, and that's where the moon has just clipped what's called the umbral shadow, which is this inner shadow, which Dr. Lucy's told us it doesn't get any direct sunlight. So the clouds have just come in. That's why the images are looking a little bit fuzzy. But thank you guys down in Dubai. We still haven't managed to get Keith into the hangout. I will definitely get the guys onto one of our shows, because we would love to hear more about the Dubai Astronomy Group's activities in the Middle East. So.
Right, absolutely. Yeah, guys, if you're just joining us, we have about 10 minutes left in the Partial Lunar Eclipse broadcast. We're with Dr. Lucy Green and Paul Cox out of the UK. Myself, Patrick Palucci's out in California, and we're looking at a live feed from Dubai. So the partial eclipse will be ending in about 12 minutes or so. I do want to point out we do have some other shows counting down. Anytime you go to Slooh's homepage, slooh.com, you'll see them counting down, and you'll know when they're going to begin. The next one on the calendar, the main show, is going to be the Saturn opposition event on Sunday the 28th, and we have a Comet ISUN show on the 30th. So those are two good events to check out. We also, you can be informed, but if you follow us on Twitter, Facebook, or any of that social media stuff, we'll send out updates as these events take place to remind you as well. if you do have a Slooh, or if you do have an iPad app, make sure you download the Slooh iPad app. It's really cool. It allows you to fly around the sky, book missions right into the sky, commanding robotic space cameras that we own and operate. So it's a neat way to build out a collection. It launched just only 10 days ago, and you can access all of this programming as well, seeing live feeds and getting the broadcast. So it's a neat product. We do have a membership product available on the homepage of Slooh, but that's really for advanced or people who are really into having full control over our equipment. It's more expensive to do that, but certainly take a look at it if it's something you'd like to do. Otherwise, I highly recommend the iPad app to get involved with Slooh. So any membership fees and everything that we do pay for all this programming that we provide to the public. And having experts on like Lucy and Bob and others, it's awesome to have them on. But of course, these people expect to be paid. So we don't, we want to bring in the best and the brightest of the world, and it's great. And that's how it gets funded, basically.
I noticed I was missing from that list, Pat. Cheers, buddy.
Yes. And of course, Paul. I forgot about Paul as well. Yeah.
No, I'm expert of nothing, master of loads of little things. The Dubai image at the moment is showing such a clear cutout of this umbral shadow. It is absolutely fantastic. I really thought we were going to have difficulty discerning very much difference at all tonight on this partial lunar eclipse. And the guys down in Dubai, they're out in the desert, they've got limited bandwidth, they've set up, they've probably got power issues, all sorts of stuff that they've had to fight, all within a matter of 12 hours to get us these live feeds. I tell you, even when you've had a week to prepare for these things, I can tell you it's stressful providing a live feed for an event like this. So have a look at the homepage, ask any questions. If anybody's got some questions in this last part of the show for Dr. Lucy Green or us, let us know there on Slooh Conversations. Pat, I did promise that we would do two things on this show. One was we'd go back to basics and maybe talk about lunar phases a little bit more.
Right.
And also, I would love to share in that collection of lunar phases that I've already started in the app. So
yeah. Go ahead and do that.
Maybe if Dr. Lucy could start talking about this is back to basics, Lucy, because I think quite often we do these shows and we assume that people have seen our previous shows and have already got a certain level of knowledge before they join us. So I promised a kind of back to basics on what causes lunar phases. We know they happen. I've got a diagram up on the screen for you.
Yeah, and it is really important to do that because we're so used to looking out at the universe from our perspective on the Earth that it's sometimes difficult to sort of take ourselves away from that and then look back onto the Earth and picture it as a planet in orbit around the Sun with a moon going around it, and then what that means for the sort of the clockwork of the solar system. So this is a great graphic here. So it's showing the Earth in the centre, and then the moon at different parts of its orbit going around the Earth, and the Sun is off on the right hand side. So you're seeing that one half of the Earth is being illuminated. So I can't see the picture very clearly, but maybe we're looking down on the North Pole of the Earth.
Yes, we are. Yeah.
Yeah. So we're seeing the side of the Earth that's being illuminated by the Sun, and then you've got the orbit of the moon going around the Earth. And so when it's in between the Sun and the Earth, the side of the moon that's lit up is of course the one that's away from us. So that's when we see new moon. So a new moon is technically invisible, and that's the point. If the alignment was just right, that we'd get a solar eclipse.
Yeah.
But most of the time the moon is above the Earth or below the Earth, so we don't see that. And then the moon carries on in its orbit around the Earth, and gradually that half that's lit up by this reflected sunlight becomes visible to us. So that's what you're pointing out there. And then it continues on its path, it goes around the back of the Earth, and then we suddenly see, not suddenly, gradually we build up to see the full illuminated moon. So that's full moon then. And if the alignment is right at that point, the moon could go through the Earth's shadow. But like as we've discussed, these are Well, I mean, they're fairly rare events, given that the moon goes around us once every month. And so when you go from new moon to full moon, we say the moon is waxing. So we're seeing more and more of the bright hemisphere, and then it goes through full moon, and then it starts to wane, and we see less and less of the illuminated moon, and it goes back to new moon again.
And Lucy, you were saying there, when it's at new, that's the position of the moon if we were to have a solar eclipse, and obviously when it's at full phase, that's the position it would be on a lunar eclipse like today. And we mentioned earlier about those two events always being linked by 2 weeks, and a full lunar cycle, so new moon to new moon, is 28 days and some number of hours. Half of that, it takes 14 days to go from new to full, and that's that linkage between solar eclipses and lunar eclipses. And Pat, I'm just going to screen share in. I just need to set up this screen sharing of the app to show you these lunar phases, which is pretty cool. So if you carry on talking in the meantime, I don't know if any questions come in.
Absolutely, absolutely. I know Keith has been trying to join us. He's providing these great live feeds out of Dubai. Keith, I can see you, but we can't hear you at all, or even I can see your box trying to appear, but unfortunately you're not able to join us. It's too bad. But I do want to give you guys at the astronomy group out there in Dubai special thanks for providing these wonderful feeds for us. I also want to thank Dr. Lucy Green for joining us for tonight's show. It's been spectacular. We've got about, I did extend the show a little longer. Hopefully it'll work okay. We have probably at best about 10 minutes left in this broadcast. What Paul's going to be doing right now is that we did launch a new iPad app, and it's spectacular.
This is so cool. This is so cool.
We're getting a lot of good feedback from people. We kind of soft launch it. It is available in all the iTunes stores around the world. If you do have an iPad, please download it. And it's a unique experience. It's completely separate from membership to Slooh. It's not any way or shape or form tied in to normal Slooh membership. But it is a great way for especially entry-level folks to get an idea about space, but also to image the night sky by commanding our network of robotic space cameras. And it's a fun way to build it out. And what happens is when you do book a mission on our network, you'll get updates in the status area. You'll get access to all the broadcast area, and Paul's going to give a quick demo of what he did with moon phases, which is kind of applicable to what he was talking about.
I'll tell you, I've been doing astronomy and robotic astronomy and observing for a very long time, but this has really got to me, this app. I love it. It's such good fun, and I'm not saying that from a sales point of view. The app's free, but this is what it is. It's a virtual sky, all right? And you can have a quick look, and you can see what we call our top missions. So we're recommending the best objects this week. Actually, we're doing mainly bright objects this week because of the full moon. That's just one thing. But I just wanted to show you one thing on here, and it's a collection of the moon that I've been collecting this month. So I just zoom into the moon here, and there aren't any images in here to start off with. So what you do is you go to the object that you want, and you press it, and up comes this little box, and then you press the Start Mission box, and you buy a mission there, which controls one of the Slooh telescopes around the world, because we're not just using our Canary Islands Observatory, we're using other facilities as well. But what I've done here, it shows you all of the images that you've got. By the way, from the educational point of view, there's this huge information box in here, which is absolutely great. It's stuffed full of loads of fantastic information on every object in the sky and where it is and stuff like that. But here you can see this is a 2-day-old waxing crescent moon, so this is only 2 days after that new moon, and that was the first mission I booked. So when I clicked that and said start mission, it sent off to the Slooh scheduler, this really clever bit of kit that we have, to schedule when the telescope was going to image the moon for me. And I did this every single night. So there's a really new moon. Then I moved on 3 days later, and then the following day, and you can see what we were talking about just now, the phase of the moon getting greater and greater. So this is still a waxing crescent. It then comes up to the first quarter moon, and then it goes into a waxing gibbous moon. And then on the 18th, a few days ago, still a waxing gibbous moon, and then even more, and then even more, and then until yesterday, which was this waxing gibbous moon, which is so close to being a full moon. But that's the kind of stuff that you can do in this. But I've also been using the app to control the telescopes to look at some fantastic nebulae, galaxies. Saturn I got in there. Jupiter was a great one as well. It is just such good fun making these collections in the app. So I probably bored you with that, but I just think it is so cool. It's just such a fun thing to use, especially in this context that we've been looking at today in collecting lunar phases. It's just
it's great. And hey Paul, I was just going to see if Keith, if he can hear us or if his audio is working yet before we get off. I was hearing him a little bit, but I don't think it's coming through still, unfortunately, because we'd love to have him on. But anyway, Keith, what we'll do is Paul will get in touch with you, and why don't we schedule a future show with you guys sometime in May, and coordinate and see what we could do together, because we could, the timing actually would probably be pretty close to Canary Islands, so we could coordinate a dual show of some sort. And depending on your guys' equipment setup, we could maybe do a solar event or whatever it is that they have. So we could, that'd be awesome. Just also a quick note on today. The full moon is only today in this eclipse. So if you're going to book a mission in the app, you're going to get this event. So that's what's cool. Also, you get the opportunity to collect specific things in space on specific days. Obviously a lot of this is weather dependent. And it doesn't just automatically roll in. Sometimes it could take several days, depending on the situation at where the equipment's located and all that. But it is like
that's live astronomy.
That's live astronomy. That's what it's all about. That's why we have multiple feeds. I mean, you'll notice our Cyprus and India feeds are offline, and you never know what's going to happen. It could be a tech issue. It could be an illness. It could be weather. It doesn't. There's a lot of different reasons why things don't happen in live astronomy. But fortunately, the Dubai feed was awesome, and we were able to cover it really well. Well, guys, we have a few. I did extend it. It looks like it's holding for those of you. So we do have, I don't know, Paul, if we are going to be, is the Canary Islands feeds up at all, or what's the situation with those?
Well, if you check the all-sky camera on the home page, I did see the moon. There is the moon rising. So let me just check. I think it was meant to start the first mission. Actually, Pat, the first missions there are Jupiter. We were just waiting for the moon to rise a little bit. So the moon, the moon images from the Canary Islands start at 10 to the hour. But you can see there already it's risen above the horizon there. So that's going to look pretty cool actually in the Slooh telescopes. We're going to be just so people can note that we're going to be watching the moon for the remainder of its phase for the next I think it's nearly 2 hours, right up until the very last part of the eclipse using the Slooh Canary telescopes. So that's what Slooh members are going to be seeing. Pat, we've got a couple of questions in.
Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead and ask
one about the app. Yes, I think this question's been asked before on the Slooh forum. Yes, the images are in the app. They're not anywhere else. They're embedded within that. If you want to use images and control robotic telescopes and have full control over where the images are, what you do with them, have to process them yourself, then go for a full Slooh membership. But that's not what the app is about. Question for Dr. Lucy. What part of the Earth, this is a geometry question, I think, Lucy, what part of the Earth are we seeing cause that shadow on the north limb of the moon?
Oh, I have to draw myself a quick picture.
That's what I was doing in my mind just now. Yeah.
Because from the side, so because the moon.
I think it's got to be the south, hasn't
it? Still drawing my picture here. Because the moon is coming up from north to south. Is that right? I remember that correctly, it's in its ascending phase, so it's going from below the Earth's orbit up to above the Earth's orbit around the Sun.
There's nothing like putting your expert on the block.
So yes, I think I agree with you that it's the south.
It's the south, we think.
From my very crude picture that I've just drawn.
Yes, Lucy, and my excuse for this is it's 9:30 here in the UK. It's already been a long day at work, so that's our excuse. We're sticking to it, but we reckon it's probably Antarctica. That's the portion of the Earth's shadow, or the portion of Earth which is casting its shadow just on that northern limb of the moon, which is still looking absolutely brilliant in the Dubai images there. And Lucy, this has now gone back to maybe some of the images that we started off the show with when you weren't here. But this is now in very much out of the partial phase. So this is in the penumbral shadow. And this is what has surprised me most of all, how much darkening we're seeing in this penumbral phase. I don't remember actually seeing a penumbral or partial eclipse before, because I've always thought, nah, they're not worth bothering about. But this has actually totally changed my mind tonight.
I totally agree with you. When I've gone out to look at lunar eclipses before, I haven't bothered with this phase.
Yeah.
So this has been really surprising. I wonder, is it something to do with the fact that we're using such good telescopes and they can display the images in a way they can change the contrast?
Well, they're not doing that, because exactly the same thing did cross my mind, and I quickly discounted it, because if the guys in Dubai were doing that, we would see the change in the lit part of the moon as well, and that's been staying fairly constant. So that bright kind of southern region from halfway down, has stayed at roughly the same kind of brightness all the way through. So that there is undoubtedly some photographic effect there, but these are raw images. There's no post-processing going on by the guys down in Dubai. This is as they're seeing it through their refracting telescope and their DSLR camera. So hopefully we might get Keith in. I know Keith's trying to still join. So Keith, can we hear you yet? It would be great to hear from them down there in Dubai, because they've done such a sterling job for us. So Keith,
hello, I can hear you.
Heard you.
Can you hear
hey,
me?
We've got you. Keith, hello.
Yeah, there you are. You made it. You made it.
That's brilliant. You guys have done such a fantastic job for us down there. I hope it's been enjoyable and not too stressful.
No, we've been having a laugh. We're out here in the middle of the desert, can't see anything or anyone, and just chilling out, taking pictures.
All right. Well, it's been an amazing event, Keith. We really appreciate it. And I don't know if you heard this, we were hoping that we could maybe do something else in the near future with you guys on some future broadcasts.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, we're in the middle of a couple of your scopes anyway, so we can fill in a nice gap for you.
Yeah, it would be awesome.
Does the Dubai Astronomy Group do a lot of outreach work with the public, Keith?
Primarily, that's what we're really incorporated for.
Yeah, so I mean, you're just as passionate about that kind of stuff as we are, and that's really why we put these public shows on to, I don't know, it's just to make science more accessible to the general public, and it's this kind of event that I think captures the public's imagination. So who have you actually got down there with you? Who else has been helping out? Give a few name checks to a few of your colleagues down there.
Well, it's out in the middle of the desert here. It's just myself and Ali Rayam here. So we've got two APO scopes and a couple of DSLRs set up.
Yeah.
And we're about 60 kilometers away from a location we call our Zubair camp, which is where we keep, we've got a permanent observatory there.
Yeah.
And I think up at the camp, Hassan's there, and maybe 60 to 80 people that were coming to watch this event.
Brilliant.
All right. So, that's great.
Absolutely brilliant. So the images have been absolutely superb. Have you been as surprised as Lucy and I have been at the amount of shadow that we've been seeing on what is, to all intents and purposes, a penumbral lunar eclipse?
Yeah, we were expecting to have to gear up and get in close to actually see something.
Yeah,
but it was quite substantial, really.
Well, if you think about it, when we've been covering other lunar eclipses, total lunar eclipses, they change. Every single one of them is different. You know, the coloring is different, the intensity seems to be different. So maybe that's just what we're seeing tonight. We're seeing that kind of natural variation that we seem to get with some of the other types of lunar eclipse. But it's been even more special because it's been such a fantastic surprise that it's been so distinctive.
Well, when you look at the sky, I think it amazes us more than it confounds us on most occasions. So,
how's it actually looking from a visual point of view? I mean, it must be quite an experience anyway, being out in the middle of the desert with your telescope set up. I mean, that's a fantastic environment to be in anyway. But what's it been like as a kind of naked eye experience, or have you been glued to your cameras?
No. Well, we had the schedule to upload something every 3 to 5 minutes, so we've been alternating that task. But looking up, you just gradually see it appear, and when we can see it, it is a brilliant moon, and this ominous shadow. And
so it is as distinctive as we're seeing it in the images with naked eye.
Yeah, definitely.
Wow.
All right.
Wow.
Well,
what a fantastic experience. Pat.
Hey guys, really quick, I just want to say, hey Lucy, I just want to say special thanks for you for coming on. The show has officially ended on Slooh's homepage. But before you leave, I just want to say thank you, and hopefully we could do something in the near future with you again, outside of just doing traditional eclipse stuff. So, and maybe other stuff that's coming on. If something opens up on your schedule on May 9th, please let me know for the annular. That'd be awesome if you pop in. And then, we'll keep you updated on other stuff that we're doing, and maybe there's a fit that works on another show that we might be doing.
Lucy, you might not ever get direct feedback from these shows, but certainly the comments in the Slooh user group and elsewhere on Google+, you're greatly admired and greatly enjoyed on these shows. So your presenting style is very accessible. So thank you, and no doubt there'll be lots of comments about that later on. So thank you for joining us.
Well, it's always great fun. So thanks for having me on, guys.
Yeah, thank you very much, Lucy. It would be great. Okay. I'll be in touch.
So, yeah, I'll speak to you soon. Enjoy the rest of the night. See you.
Okay.
Goodbye, Lucy.
Bye-bye.
Pat, over to you again.
Yeah, so guys, that's basically going to be a wrapping up our show tonight. Keith, do you have any final thoughts? Now, it's unfortunate you jumped in. It took a while for you to get rolling on the Hangout, but we do want to set something up with you guys in the future. Do you have any final thoughts on the lunar eclipse?
Yeah, well, we're fortunate that we don't get much bad weather as you guys. So our observing season runs from really the October through to about now, beginning of May, and that's when you normally have the more complicated time. So yeah, we can always hook up and do something there.
That'll be brilliant, Keith. I am so glad you managed to join the Hangout before the end of the show came in. I was dying to hear what the experience was like actually being out there in the desert. And just as a reminder to all of our viewers, Keith and his colleagues in the Dubai Astronomy Group jumped in with about 12 hours warning to set this up for us when our other feeds were lost due to weather and ill health. So Keith, I really can't thank you enough, not only for jumping in at that last minute, but also for providing such surprising images. It's been a surprise to all of us tonight just how much of that shadow we were able to see on this kind of partial lunar eclipse, which everybody usually says, oh no, they're boring, they're not worth watching. But the images you provided tonight have totally overthrown a lot of people's ideas of what lunar eclipses are worth watching. So thank you very much, and please send thanks to all of your colleagues as well.
Yeah, you're welcome. No, thanks for letting us join in.
It's brilliant.
All right, guys. Well, for Slooh Space Camera, this is Patrick Palucci. Please join us on Sunday night, the 28th, for the Saturn Opposition Show. Paul Cox will be hosting, along with Bob Berman and Matt Francis. So there should be a cool show.
Yeah.
And don't forget about downloading the Slooh iPad app. And guys, thanks very much, Paul. Great job. Thank you, Keith, and we hope to work with you guys soon.
Excellent. Cheers, Paul. Well done.
Thanks, Keith. Enjoy the rest of the eclipse.
Thanks, man. Bye-bye.
Good night, Pat.
Bye. Okay. Hi, everyone. This is Patrick Palucci with Slooh Space Camera. It's Thursday, April 25th at noon Pacific, 3 Eastern Daylight, 1900 UTC, and we're here today to provide you live coverage of the partial lunar eclipse that's taking place as we speak. We have a great group of people coming on to the panel today. If you're watching this on Slooh.com, you can interact with the panel by clicking the Slooh Conversations button, and we'll be monitoring it throughout the 90-minute presentation today. I'm on right now with Slooh engineer and outreach coordinator Paul Cox. Paul, how you doing today?
Yeah, very good. Thank you, Pat.
Great. What we're doing here, Paul's actually in the UK. I'm out here in Los Angeles, California, and we're looking right now at live feeds out of Dubai, courtesies of our new friends out there at the Dubai Astronomy Group in the United Arab Emirates. And we're fortunate enough to have one of the individuals come on and join us to talk more about their organization as well as talk about the live feeds that they're providing. We did have a few other feeds that we were hoping to provide from some other locations, specifically India and Cyprus, but unfortunately the weather conditions there are not cooperating well. And so those will be listed as feed offline. If you click on the arrow buttons on the home page of Slooh, you'll see them there. We also have some other feeds potentially out of the Canary Islands later in the broadcast of the moon. But the core presentation today is going to be on coming from Dubai with this feed we're seeing right now. And the eclipse itself, and we'll talk more about this in detail, actually it's already begun. And we're going to be covering it, and you'll start, this is even though it's technically a partial lunar eclipse, it's not going to be as dramatic as some previous ones, given where the moon shadow, the Earth shadow on the moon and all that are taking place. But hopefully we should be able to see some activity and moon changing over the course of the show. Just a couple notes before we get rolling here officially. We will have Dr. Lucy Green on. For those of you in the UK, you probably would recognize Lucy from some of the programs she's on the BBC. Most recently, she's been on the Stargazing Live presentations in the sky at night, and she'll be coming on. She's a solar researcher, and she'll give us her take. We'll include a lot of the sun in this broadcast and talk about it and what's going on with solar activity, although we are focused on the moon for the main broadcast. Also, for those of you who have an iPad app, I want to make sure you guys know about our new iPad app that's available. Definitely download it. It's free in the iTunes store, and it's really a cool product. You have the ability to fly around the sky looking where all these great celestial objects are, but you can also book missions directly into the sky chart commanding one of our robotic space cameras for your collections. So you can be imaging the night sky with your own pics by commanding our robotic scopes. And for today, for instance, if you book a mission to the moon right out of your app, you're going to get part of the partial lunar eclipse image coming in. And all these images that come in are time-stamped. You know what they are, and you can keep them as a recording of the night sky. So it's your own personal sky. And we're really excited to have that out. And the best way to go and use the app is to go to Slooh's top missions. So that's what you guys should do with who are watching this program or on the homepage and have an iPad. That's something to do. Okay, so Paul, here we are. We're looking at a live shot out of Dubai, and we're looking at the eclipse coming in. So, Paul, maybe you could give us a quick overview of what exactly is happening right now with the eclipse. I mean, what is going on that's causing this shadow on the moon?
Yeah. Okay, well, we can do that, Pat. We've got plenty of time this evening. We're going to go over this with Lucy Green as well. But to start off with, I really want to give a huge shout out to the guys down in Dubai. They've Hassan and Al. they've last minute. And we lost our other feeds, and these guys have literally come on board within 24 hours. So thank you, everybody down in Dubai, United Arab Emirates. And actually, with that, Pat, that's the first thing I'm going to explain to people. I'm sharing in now a global map. And what this map is denoting is where this lunar eclipse is visible from. Now, hopefully you can see this. So there's Africa here, there's India here, Russia up here, United States all the way over here in this grey area. Now, an eclipse is only visible at a certain point for a few hours usually, and you have to be facing the moon at that point to be able to see it. So anywhere in this white zone is going to be seeing the full partial eclipse. So in other words, they're going to see the entire event. This is a partial lunar eclipse. So if you're in that area, and where I'm pointing to now, that's Dubai, that's the United Arab Emirates. That's where our guys are now from the Dubai Astronomy Group, who are feeding us these great live images. Now, if you're in these grey areas here, and that's where our Canary Islands Observatory is, by the way, where I'm just pointing to in the hangout here, we'll get to see this partial lunar eclipse as the moon is rising. And this is at a certain point when it's called going into the umbral phase. And we're going to go into that in a bit more detail later. But the other thing that I want to point out to you is that if you're in this far left or far right grey area, in other words, in the Pacific or in North America, you don't get to see any of the eclipse because the moon hasn't risen by the time the eclipse has actually finished. So what's an eclipse then? Well, we all know that the moon orbits the Earth, and I'm showing in a nice little diagram here that we're going to talk about this as well a bit later on. We're going to go all the way back to the basics tonight, Pat. We're going to talk about lunar phases and the creation of the moon and stuff like that. And this little diagram just shows in here Earth's in the center. We've got sunlight coming in from the right-hand side. And over on the left, that's when a moon would be full. Now, a lunar eclipse, it can only take place on a full moon, on the day of the full moon. And that's because the eclipse is when the moon is opposite the Earth from the sun's perspective. And it's when the moon slowly travels into the Earth's shadow. So if you can imagine, here's the Earth, we've got the sunlight coming over here. The Earth, just like any other object in sorry, here's some beeping there in the background. The Earth, just like any other object, will cast shadows. And what a lunar eclipse is the moon traveling through that shadow. Now, there are two parts to the moon's shadow. This is what gets a little bit confusing, but we're going to go over this several times tonight. Pat, you got some feedback coming in there, mate?
Yeah, I'm sorry. I was doing some testing. Go ahead.
Okay, no, you know it's difficult. You can't talk over it. So look, this diagram here represents, Pat, the Earth's shadow. Now, this dark grey area in here, that's called the umbra, and it's the umbral shadow. Not a great word for me to say because I can't say my R's. But that's where all of the light from the sun is cut off. In other words, there's no light managing to creep around the Earth at all. And when the several images tonight in India and Cyprus and a couple of other places, but we've had bad weather and ill health, unfortunately. People dropping out like flies on us, Pat, but right. I really cannot thank these guys at the Dubai Astronomy Group more than enough, because they stepped in literally with 24 hours notice, and they've got this live feed coming direct from us. And of course, the reason why Dubai is so well suited to this is if I just go back and share that map to you again, you'll be able to see just why. In fact, I've lost my ability to screen share, but I'll screen share this in a little bit later. Dubai is right in the center of that eclipse area where it's visible from. So they're going to see the whole eclipse. Not only do they see the whole eclipse, but the moon is very high up in the sky for them as well. So that's pretty cool. So
Yeah, and guys, just a quick note. Again, I know some of you are watching this all over the web on various sites, perhaps like space.com or Nat Geo or any of those types of sites. And you can certainly keep doing that. Paul will screen share in every so often maybe a shot of what's going on from the image feeds from the lunar eclipse. If you actually want to see the feeds and control them, you got to go to slooh.com to see them. You can still see the Hangout box here as well, the panel.
Yeah, I'm showing people now, Pat. So if you're not watching on the Slooh homepage, this is the reason why we say you should watch it here, because you get the live feeds coming in here. There we've got Dubai 1. The guys down in Dubai might actually be sending us some other images, maybe some wide field of the kind of landscape and where they are, and we're looking forward to hearing from Keith Cobby exactly what their setup is down there and stuff like that. We may have the Tenerife, the Canary Islands telescopes coming online a little bit later. That's in the area where the eclipse is going on as the moon is rising. So we're really pointing the telescopes down at a very low angle there. But I'm just showing in on the screen now, this is our all-sky camera. This is a special camera, points directly up into the sky, shows a 180-degree view. The weather tonight in the Canary Islands is looking pretty good, so we should be able to get the moon. It's a high altitude site. This is where the Slooh robotic telescopes are. High altitude site, nearly 8,000 feet. We actually have a horizon less than 0 because we're so high up. We can actually see below the 0 altitude, which is pretty cool. But so that's going to be interesting to watch those a little bit later, Pat. But if you are on the home page, those are the little triangles that you click up here to flick between these feeds, and the guys in Dubai have gone back to that close-up view, so that's going to be fantastic if they can keep switching between this zoomed-in view. And in fact, you can see quite clearly that there's some darkening on the moon there,
yeah, you can,
which surprises me. I wasn't expecting that degree of darkening. Now, we need to see that image after image. We need to ask Keith whether they've got any clouds down there, exactly what kind of conditions they've got down there. I'm saying clouds in Dubai. I think that's fairly unlikely. But also, when you're on the home page, you get the Hangout. The Hangout is embedded down here, so you still get to see it. I've actually switched it off so I don't get any feedback. And you get the benefit of being able to press that little button there that says Slooh Conversations, and that's where you can ask us any questions. So please ask away there. I know Dr. Lucy Green is always fantastic at answering all sorts of questions about lunar eclipses and her speciality, the sun. So yeah, do please have a look on the home page. Flick between all of those. You can also, I believe, Pat, we've got the pin it button there, so if you press that pin it button, the current image will automatically be pinned to your Pinterest board. So yeah, that's enough for me, I think, Pat.
You got it. So I just invited in Keith from Dubai. So Keith, if you're listening to the show, you should see an invite. Okay. Slooh Space Camera Show will begin in about 3 to 4 minutes. Okay. All right, Slooh Space Camera Show will begin in about 3 minutes. 3 minutes. It's probably me. Go. Okay. Okay. So how are things out in the UK, Paul?
Yeah, good. Good. We're kind of it's trying to turn into spring, but not quite getting there. So.
Yeah, you know, it's actually turning a little bit better here out in California. It was.
I think a little bit better in California means a slightly different thing to England.
Yeah, I imagine so. I imagine so. Yeah, it's been actually pretty cold. It hasn't really hit the major spring yet, but it looks like it's starting to get there. Okay, the Slooh show will officially begin in about 2 minutes. 2 minutes. If you're watching this in YouTube, G+, or on a third-party site, we will also have live feeds right on slooh.com. That's going to be where the main presentation is. You can certainly watch it in those environments, but if you want to control feeds or interact with the panel, you're going to want to go to slooh.com in order to do that. Is your clock going to go off?
Yeah.
Appropriate time.
It will.
To start the event. Okay, the Slooh show is going to begin in about 30 seconds. Okay, we're going to start pretty quick here. As soon as the live show begins, you'll see it on the home page. The live feed will click over.
Moon goes into the umbral shadow. That's when we get a total eclipse of the moon. If only part of the moon goes into that umbral shadow, then it's a partial lunar eclipse, and that's what we've got tonight. But this particular partial lunar eclipse is tiny. You can see on this diagram that it's only the very top part of the moon, which is going to be entering that umbral shadow. Now, I've asked the guys down in Dubai, and that's what they've done. They've kind of zoomed in on that area of the moon for us, because when it reaches this umbral phase, we want to be keeping our eyes open to see if we can see this kind of curved shadow at the top of the moon. So that's what we're going to be keeping our eyes open for. But already you can see that the moon has entered what's called the penumbral shadow, and that's this outer grey ring, and that's where part of the sun's light is being shielded from the moon. So those are the different types of eclipse. We are going to talk about them a lot more when Dr. Lucy Green comes on. We're not going to. We deliberately wanted to cover this, even though it wasn't one of those absolutely spectacular full lunar eclipses that we've seen in the past. This is from a couple of years ago. This is 2011 when we covered it from Cyprus. This was a glorious thing. Now, when you have a total lunar eclipse, Pat, you get these beautiful colors coming out on the moon, but we're not going to see that tonight. It's far more subtle, it's far more distinctive in a way. We've really got to keep our eyes open for this gradual darkening of the moon, and then at a certain point tonight, I'll tell you what the times are in a second, we're going to see this tiny little bit right at the top of the moon with a dark shadow or a darker shadow. Now, it is going to be really, really difficult to see, but the guys from Dubai are doing their best to zoom in on that area so we can keep our eyes open for that. And I think we've got, haven't we? We've got one or two of the Dubai Astronomy Group guys coming on the show, Pat?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm going to be inviting him in here in about 5 minutes, and I believe Keith is going to be joining us. Keith Cobby, I believe. I hope I'm pronouncing his last name properly. He'll be joining us shortly and giving us an update directly from Dubai, which will be cool. We will also have Dr. Lucy Green on later on in about 12:30 Pacific, 3:30 Eastern, 19:30 UTC. Lucy will be joining us as well, and she can talk about all the stuff related to the sun and the moon, and that'll be fascinating stuff. If you're just joining us, we are pulling live feeds from Dubai. Our Cyprus and India feeds, unfortunately, the weather there is poor, and we're not going to be able to get anything out of there tonight. But fortunately, we have an awesome feed coming in from Dubai, so that's going to give us a good idea of looking for some of these changes in the moon shadow as the shadow hits. As Paul was alluding to, it's not going to be as dramatic as a total solar eclipse, which I believe is not going to happen until April 2014, I think is the next one. And we certainly will be covering it when it does happen. But we definitely wanted to cover these other events that take place because they are fascinating in their own right, and it helps, if those who are interested out there, to give me an idea of what's going on with the relationship between the sun, the earth, and the moon. So we'll be following this for about 90 minutes. We're about 15 minutes into the show, and if we may be able to get some feeds out of the Canary Islands as well, but that's probably going to be much later in the show, depending.
Oh, excellent.
So we'll see where that goes.
Sorry to interrupt, Pat, but the guys in Dubai have zoomed out on the moon, so we're now getting the full lunar disk showing in this live feed from Dubai. So don't forget, everybody, you've got to be on the home page to see these live images, and you can, unfortunately, we were hoping you were going to be able to select between